show only their best buildings because they think that's what parents want to see.
Hmm.
You know, I always say if I have to see one more rock climbing wall or lazy river, I'm going to
Yeah.
go crazy
Yeah.
because we've been on an amenities arms race in the past few years. But when I ask students, "Where's your favorite place on campus?" You know, when I hear this at Occidental, it's the quad, the fountain, the dining hall. You know, it's always the seemingly random place where they gather with their friends.
Yeah.
You know, and it isn't always the biggest breast brand new, but we feel because we raise money and build it, we better show it on the tour. I think sometimes there's a little lack of authenticity on those things, and I just help schools correct that.
And if a student is, you know, even talking about all these things that can make a really positive, informative, and authentic tour, but what if there's a school that doesn't have all those things going for them and has a really standard tour, but a student's still interested? How could that student, I mean, I guess you'd ask the tour guide specific questions, but are there any tips that either of you have to find the heart of that tour and kind of find the authenticity in that if it's not an authentic tour? Laura, go ahead.
I'll go ahead.
Jeff, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, Jeff, go ahead.
It might not be, let me say this, that might just be because there's one personality in the missions office that is driving the tour to be that way.
Yeah.
But when you meet all the students on campus, they really are very authentic, very genuine, very engaging. So again, you know, go into the student center, go into the dining hall, stop students walking across the campus and talk to them. But for the most part, I think most schools are really trying to render their authentic self the essence of their place and connect with best fit students.
And then a question kind of on a different vein of thought, but for both of you, or first for Laura, how do you deal with, because Occidental is a great school, it's, I guess, the oldest liberal arts school on the West Coast, but in all fairness, it's not the same kind of brand name as, say, an Ivy League or an older, more established school. How do you deal with that? How do you get kids to look past that? Because personally, I know a lot of my friends and a lot of other kids are looking for that, even if they maybe shouldn't be. How do you get kids to go past that?
That's a really good question, and it was something that I definitely dealt with when I was a senior deciding to go to Ox, because none of my friends had heard of Occidental, and we lived about 18 miles away from the school, which is actually very common, I think. I think that you just have to tell people that name recognition is not everything, and that should not be your driving force, because you could go to a top Ivy League, a top state school, have that wonderful name and be completely unhappy.
Yeah.
And if the name, you know, is the only thing holding you back, you really have to reconsider your priorities, because it's about the quality of the experience, not just the prestige behind, you know, Occidental or other schools.
And Jeff, how do you train tour guides to impart that information without directly saying it?
Well, I think the thing is, I always remind them, you know, Einstein said, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts.
Yeah.
You know, the rankings rank some very specific things, and, you know, and I think that a student who is being genuine and being authentic, it still comes down to, I visited campus and it felt right. College is an intimate product choice. You live there, you sleep there, you eat there. You know, you're buying a part of a culture. And I totally agree with Laura. You're going to get a good education at just about every school. Students need to ask themselves, who do I want to shower with? Because it's an intimate product choice. You know what I mean? Who do I want to hang out with? Who do I want to have conversations with and argue politics with? In the dining hall, in my residence hall, and I think most tour guides get that because they just went through it. And when I ask them, why did you choose the school, they all say, because I visited and it felt right.
And then let's see, do either of you? I know I've heard from a few different people that, well, actually, I went specifically. I'll say college names. It's fine. I'm not going to say the one I didn't like. But I went and I did a tour at Scripps, and I met a girl who ended up choosing Scripps, and she's an incoming freshman, and she was telling me that a really big part of her visit, and it's fine if you guys don't work with this, but I think you do, was actually the overnight. And so
Yes.
I know there's this whole thing where what happens, I guess, is admitted students or prospective students do an overnight at the school. Do either of you guys work with that and do those?
Yes, my student interns coordinate the overnight visits, and I coordinate them, so I kind of oversee that system.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, do you work with kids on that, or?
I do, but I want my clients to have a really great day visit and Saturday visit and open house visit first.
Yeah.
And then I want to make sure that they have a great overnight if they're going to do it. But I think that should be more for accepted students, deposited students. I've seen that abused by a lot of students that have a friend there and no admissions will allow them to stay for free in the dorm and give them a couple meal passes. So
Yes.
I think in my opinion, if you're further down the line, a lot can go wrong on a campus visit. On an overnight, a lot can go wrong. So I'm about, let's fix the day visit first, and then when we get it right, let's move on to the overnight.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, would you recommend doing that? How much do you think it helps kids decide on a school?
I think it can help them a lot because a lot of school activity happens after 6 p.m. when people are in the residence halls having intellectual or not intellectual conversations, when they're talking about their frustrations, when they're going to their club meetings. That's really when you get a sense for the vibrant community we have here on campus, because it's wonderful to go to classes. It's great to get a sense of that, but you'll really get to know students when they're in the dining hall. So I think that for those small differences, that'll make the difference for everyday life for you. Do you like the facilities? Do you like the situation? Do people seem to be enjoying themselves? Are these the type of students that you want to live with? Is this someone who you want to be your neighbor for the next 4 years? That can really help you when you're making those difficult decisions once you've been admitted.
Yeah. And what else do you do to help encourage students to enroll once they're admitted?
We have yield events in April on Fridays where we have students come, and we have some panels with administrators and students, but we also really encourage them to go to classes so they can see the academic setting, meet the professors, experience a discussion-based course, and those are really where we try and convince students of whether or not Oxy will be for them. Do you enjoy our campus? Do you enjoy the facilities? But do you also enjoy the people who make the campus?
Yeah. And then just a last question, kind of for both of you, what is the main thing that you want people, or that you want students especially, to realize after this hour of conversation, and something they really need to remember to do when they're on a campus visit, or something they need to take advantage of when they're there? Go ahead, Jeff, you can start with that one.
Okay. Do your research, spend 5 minutes before you go to that school and do your research more robustly, so you don't cram too many schools in on a road trip, because you're not doing yourself justice and you're not doing that campus justice. I know families from the East Coast, and we got to go to Pomona, Oxy, USC, UCLA all in one day. That's not, I need you to spend a little bit more time on campus. And then, drive around all of campus that you're going to see, take a look at the community, and have an idea of your questions before you get on campus.
And Laura, what about you?
Very similar to Jeff's advice. I would say before you go on any of these visits, sit down and think about the real questions that you have about anything, about the climate, about the facilities, about the food, about sororities. Think about everything that you want to know about the day-to-day life, not just about the buildings, not just about the history, things that you won't be able to research online. And don't feel embarrassed, and don't neglect any of those details, because if it means something to you, if it'll impact your day-to-day life, you have to figure that out, and you have to ask those questions.